Hello and welcome back to another video from A Geek and Two Woofs. Today I'd like to talk to you about these. For those of you that don't know, these are the new Apple AirPod Max and they're priced at £549 here in the UK. They represent the first Apple branded over-the-ear headphones. Sure, they had the Beats headphones before and they had the in-ear AirPods, but these are the first over-the-ear version. That's a lot of money, certainly the high end of the pro-consumer price bracket. So what do you get for that money? Well, you get this rather strange case, which I know there's been a lot of talk about online, and you get these headphones. They come in different colours. You can get them in grey, which these ones are, then there's silver, there's green, there's blue, and there is a pink. The build quality is typical Apple in as much as it's nice, it's high quality, it's cool metal, nice colours, the things just glide in and out, there's no clicking when you adjust the headband. The headband is a weaved fabric which helps spread the weight of these actual headphones themselves, which should not be underestimated. One thing that I was struck about the first time I wore them is how heavy they are. These headphones have no touch controls, it's all smooth. It does borrow from the Apple Watch and has a crown dial interface. What's interesting as well is these earpieces come straight off, they're just magnetic, giving you the option if you want to change them, to color coordinate. The mesh around here is quite breathable and so it never really gets too hot, or it certainly hasn't in the last few days that I've been using them. So I have had the opportunity to use these for a couple of days now. I did almost 2-3 days straight video calling with work and they were really comfortable. You do notice the weight. Being metal, they are a little bit heavier than some of the alternatives that we're going to look at, but you don't really notice it. These headphones have noise cancelling abilities, and whilst I've only used them inside, I was able to test that to some extent. I had some building work going on in other places outside of the house and I was able to operate and still continue to work, and it did not interfere with any of my calls or any of my music listening to. So hardly scientific, but certainly from a day-to-day use, I was impressed with the noise cancelling abilities of these headphones. Sound quality is massively subjective. Some people prefer treble, where other people want to really punchy bass. And so I really think if you can, it's difficult in the current climate to go and test these out, but if you can, try and test them before you buy them, especially if you are quite particular as to a certain sound profile that you prefer. We should talk about some of the controversial items on this. Firstly, there's no power button. Yes, we've got this crown, but you can't actually turn these off. The best you can do is enter these into a low or ultra low power state. These headphones use the lightning bolt connector, which is a little disappointing, to be honest. Most of the modern top-end headphones use USB-C. I personally have started transferring away from lightning bolt and using USB-C or wireless for charging. So it's a bit unfortunate that now I have to make sure I always have one of those cables around. Unfortunately, you can't collapse these headphones. So, I mean, that's it. This is how you carry them. This is how you store them. They look a bit like a purse or a handbag, or some people think it looks like a bra. And the case doesn't necessarily offer a massive amount of protection. Like there's still the metal here and on the sides, and this isn't protected. So these PX7s were my everyday over-the-ear headphones, and they work amazingly well. The sound quality is very impressive. It has a great punchy, rich bass, but I did find that the heads on them was relatively small. Maybe I've got big ears, but it used to kind of give me a little bit of a headache after prolonged use, as they're quite tight. If you compare the cups from the PX7 to the AirPod Max, you can see the AirPod Max is slightly bigger, which for me is my preference. It gives more room. It doesn't feel that my earlobes are being too kind of crushed too much by the fabric. The PX7s represent, or at least used to represent, the higher end of the consumer range of over-the-ear headphones, and the build quality is certainly good. I mean, compared to the Apple, perhaps it's starting to show a little bit of difference, but there's a lot of hard plastics, nice fabrics, not much metal, but then that means it doesn't weigh nearly as much as the Apple. Comfort-wise, these pads are not detachable, and they're not overly breathable. It's quite a solid plastic on the other side. I haven't noticed it too much, but with prolonged use they can feel a little bit confined and they get hot. Also, it's probably not surprising that the PX7 does struggle a little bit when you connect it to new devices. You have to hold switches up and then down and do a kind of a bit of a merry dance to get it to connect, which is not the end of the world, certainly. But when you compare it to the seamlessness of the AirPod Max, it definitely does feel a little clunky. Noise cancellation on these is impressive. It certainly shuts out the vast majority of background noise. Probably, I would argue, these are maybe slightly better. Now, I have not used these H9i's that often. For me personally, the head cups are way too small for my ears. I find that they're not necessarily getting the full, complete seal. And so the sound isolation on these I find is not as great as some of the alternatives. In addition with these, I'm not a massive fan of the touch controls on the side. It's great that the Apple has gone with the physical buttons. I know some people really like touch controls, but for me, I'm not a massive fan on these. The sound quality of the H9s versus the Apple, again, is very comparable, which perhaps isn't unsurprising as these are a premium headphones, or at least they were until these came along. The build quality on these H9s is pretty impressive. There's some really nice levers, there is some metal, these cups are nice and soft, and it certainly doesn't weigh as much as these Apple headphones. I happen to have handy some of these Sony PlayStation Pulse 3D headphones, which perhaps is a little unfair to compare them to the Apple AirPod Max. These retail for about £90 here in the UK versus the 550, so there's a slight discrepancy there in price. But not surprisingly, these are plastic, it's quite light. The quality of the suction pads or the pads around the ears is certainly not bad for the money. Sound quality, I've actually been really impressed with these when using with a PlayStation. The 3D sound is pretty impressive. If you've had a chance, or if you get a chance, then do try these out on a PlayStation 5, because I think they add a lot. Not sure I would use them for my phone if I was listening to music or making a voice call, so perhaps it's a little unfair to compare them in this range. But if you can get hold of them, they're definitely worth getting for gaming. These are my Bose Quiet Comfort, and they are starting to show their age a little bit. Build quality wise, we're talking plastic again, some nice rubber at the top and some great kind of foam for the head patch. These offer great sound. It's the classic Bose deep bass, which perhaps for some people is too much, but for me, they certainly work for a very long time. They're starting to show their age a little bit in how they connect to modern devices and switching between one device and another. Comfort-wise, these have really soft pads, but there's not much ventilation in them. You can't remove them to kind of clean them, so they do get a little bit sweaty. So if we accept that sound quality is subjective, what other things would make this stand out versus these? Firstly, the build quality is incredible. Some of these use plastics, which is not a bad thing, but this feels a little bit more expensive, and it is. In noise cancellation tests, I've been impressed with the Apple, but then I've been impressed with some of these as well. Again, I think that it does represent perhaps the top end of that, but is that £150 better than some of these? Probably not. Connectivity on the Apple is of course brilliant with other Apple products. If you're not an Apple user, perhaps you would struggle a little bit to see the benefit in terms of these above some of these. And even if you are an Apple user, is the ability to seamlessly switch between devices worth that premium? Personally, it is for me. Having spent 3 days using this pretty much non-stop, I actually am really impressed and they won't be going back. If you like my video, then please hit subscribe and leave a comment in the box below.